we'll move on to the links that Celtic are being, the players that Celtic are being linked with at the minute, because there are a couple. There is rumours that Liel Abada is going to sign from Maccabi Tabah at the end of the day, if not tomorrow. And then there's Brandon Soppy, a right back from Rennes, who's in his last year of contract with the French club as well. A 4 million transfer that's been rumoured. That seems to be more likely than the other rumour coming in about the other Rennes right back. I think that might be an agent trying to work his magic with that transfer. James, I know you've been looking at Brandon Soppy and Abada as well. So what type of players are there? Are they good enough for Celtic?
Well, again, all I can do is give you my view based off of the profile that I built. So I take it with a grain of salt. But I think there's definitely, as far as the fullbacks go, I'd say either seems to profile. And Soppy's 19. He's played limited, but he stayed at Rennes. With the limited amount of data that he had in the games that he played, he profiles fine. He's probably a little bit more developed on the ball playing side, which again is an inverted fullback. If that's the way that looks like we're going to be playing, that seems to fit. He's a decent size fullback. He's not Frimpong size basically, or a Taylor size. He's more,
I think he's 5'11", I think.
Yeah. So he's more of a, as I say, more of a European size, more of a European profile in that regard. So I think there's, a lot to like there. But he's 19. I mean, that's young. But I think that's probably also fits with what we're going to see with Ange. I mean, that's kind of the dictum coming in, I think. Also relates to the conversation on the center back side, and Yelda and Murray and, Welsh, is that he's more likely to, look at developing these people and giving them a pathway into the first team, where we've been horribly lacking in that for quite a while now. So Soppy and Bowie, I think I joked Baba Bowie last night, which is a Howard Stern reference from the United States in radio. But Bowie's the other guy. He's played a lot. He's 20. He played at Dion. Again, I always joke how horrible my linguistics are. Dion, is that? Yeah. Dion, well over 2,000 minutes last year. So pretty good sample, but they were a terrible team. Which I actually found interesting in his data profile is that he put up a decent amount of creative passing for a team that was that bad. And particularly his crossing stats were really good. So I suspect he's really good at crossing. That doesn't make as much sense profile wise relative to what we've seen so far from an Ange. So I tend to agree with you. And my guess is that Soppy's still probably the main target. If there's a logical coherence based off of my assumptions here, which I might be wrong. Again, who knows? I don't know. It's still quite early as far as how Ange has been playing and what he's going to be doing. But the Israeli winger, I think, is a harder call. I think a lot of people kind of leapt to the Shved analogy, which I think's a little lazy. I think the big part there is because he's massively outperformed his XG, which was, and he's got an awesome highlight reel. So that's basically the extent of the Shved analogy. I think the issue there is that by all reports, he's extremely athletic and plays fairly aggressively. I don't see that translating in his data. I mean, I don't see things like, particularly for the position he's playing, I don't see it in dribbles. I don't see it in progressive runs, acceleration metrics. So he's not terribly creative. His crossing isn't, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of his data is kind of just okay or even below average for the sample profile that I put together for his peer group, which is basically, players in senior competitions that are kind of 20 and younger. So I wasn't comparing him to, Liverpool and Chelsea wingers. It was, or only, it was a large sample and of like players, and he just doesn't stand out really in any way other than his goal scoring record. And that, I think that's the anxiety, which is maybe he does have an outlier skill in shooting. It's possible. Or maybe he can get coached. He's so young. I think he's 19. Maybe this aggression and physical talent and speed that he has can be channeled productively to get more output, press more. I mean, he's like, things like his interception stats aren't there even for a winger as well. So there's just not a lot of output in event data that suggests that he's translating his athleticism to production, like I said, other than goal scoring.
Okay.
And so that can be developed. Maybe that's what Celtics see is a path to coaching that and putting him in a system that's going to highlight it. And that's certainly plausible. It's just from the profile I built, I don't see evidence of it yet.
It sounds a bit like the Henrik Mkhitaryan transfer to Manchester United. When he signed for United, he had some insane stats when he came to the Bundesliga the season before. Like I'm talking 25 odd assists along with 26 goals in his season. And then he came, and I'm not saying Mkhitaryan's a bad player. I'm just saying he wasn't that player. So this guy could be the greatest player to come out of the Israeli league in the last 10, 15 years, or he could be a pretty decent player who, maybe is not as good as his I'm going to say stats, but what I mean is the frontline stats as in goals, assists, etc. He might not be as good as they suggest. So I'm going to hold fire until I actually see the guy if he does arrive at Celtic.
Absolutely. And to me, it's I can see a plausible scenario for the path of development for him because, again, I would think he's going to play behind Forrest. Right. I'd be surprised if he's going to just come in and displace Forrest, or if that's the plan. So, if the scenario that I laid out, that they have identified someone who's got raw ability that they can coach, and that kind of fits with Iragidi too, by the way, and Shaw. Right. So we've got one of the things from an analytics perspective it's all about is pattern recognition. Right. So it's deducing patterns and learning things from patterns, whether it be in data or behavior. And so we've got a pattern forming here, which is fairly raw 19, 20-year-old players that have the athletic components that appear to be fertile, but maybe a little bit deficient on the skill side. And that's right for development. And we've got a manager who's got a track record of development. So that makes sense.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if it was under Neil Lennon, I'd be worried because are these players going to be coached? But under Ange, it seems like they actually are. Let's move on to the preseason games because Celtic have had 2 preseason games already. So we've played against Charlton Athletic and we've played against Sheffield Wednesday, and we're playing against Bristol City tonight at 7:30. I think that game is 2 wins from 2 so far. And there are patterns starting to emerge in the 2 games that we've actually played. Again, preseason games, can't judge too much on it. Do I believe that Celtic are going to be playing the same way in November as they're playing now? No, I don't. But there are obvious progressions in which Ange seems to look to improve the team. And Alan, what are your early thoughts of what you've been seeing?
Yeah, so just 1 second before we get into that, I just want to give you a little theory. It's not based on any inside information or what have you about the Israeli winger. Was it Abada?
Abada.
Abada, sorry. I wonder actually if we're buying him as a striker, and the reason I say that is and I would ask James, how does he profile as a striker? In that benchmark, what would his stats look like? Because he has played as a striker. His main attribute is goal scoring. If you think that we've got Forrest, and I think Forrest is going to be an absolute hit as far as Postecoglou is concerned in terms of how he wants his wingers to play. And then Dembele looks like he's going to get a chance. And if you think of the fact that we've actually, if you assume that Eduardo will be off, it looks like Griffiths is not long for this world. And obviously, we've got Ajeti. We've literally got 1 striker. So I'm thinking, what is the most logical answer to why are we signing this kid? And to me, it's to play him as a striker. So I'll just leave you with that thought. But again, it's just based on nothing more than, the old Sherlock Holmes maxim: if you don't know the answer, what's the most obvious kind of conclusion that you come to?
That's a great take, Alan. I love that. You just rocked my world. So I got to think about that.